This story follows a young man who, after destroying and ruining a ladies-only business, a restaurant that sustains her family, finds himself falling in love with her. The big question is, can she ever forgive him, or will she seek revenge? Grab your popcorn as we dive into this captivating movie. Hello everyone, and welcome to my amazing channel. Today, we'll explore another interesting and popular Nigerian movie from Uchenna Mbunabo TV, featuring our favorite actor, Clinton Joshua. Stay tuned for all the fun, twists, and turns. The movie begins with a young man named Nonso, a food critic, grammarian, and content creator. In one of his videos, Nonso critiques a dish from Food Go's company. Despite its appealing packaging, he harshly criticizes the taste of the food, delivering such mean remarks that some viewers argue about the impact his opinions could have on businesses. Even though his comments could ruin companies, his loyal fans continue to support him. Meanwhile, a young woman named Ima lives with her mother, who comes home late one night, drunk. Ima confronts her about this, but her mother brushes her off and retreats to her room. The next morning, Ima's mother wakes her up, asking for money. Ima refuses, pointing out that she already provides for all the household needs while her mother spends recklessly. Frustrated, her mother uses emotional blackmail, accusing Ima of not loving her and reminding her of how she brought her into the world. This guilt trip works, and Ima gives her mother money, even though it is meant for new clothes and shoes. Afterward, Ima prepares for work. Later that day, Nonso spends time with his girlfriend, enjoying a meal together. However, Nonso's overly critical nature surfaces as he constantly corrects her, even down to using the correct cutlery. This behavior causes her to lose her appetite. As she decides to leave, he promises to stop correcting her, but moments later, he embarrasses her again by pointing out her mispronunciation of dessert. Humiliated, she leaves, and although Nonso feels relieved, it becomes evident that his perfectionism drives people away. What do you think? Was Nonso too harsh, or should he change? Share your thoughts in the comments as we continue. At Ima's workplace, a customer gives a tip to a staff member, which causes a misunderstanding among the employees. Their manager intervenes, scolding them and telling them to return to work. Shortly after, the restaurant's CEO arrives and holds a meeting with the manager. In her office, Ima discusses the restaurant's growth and the competition posed by a newly opened restaurant nearby. She points out that their inability to raise prices makes it hard to stay competitive, emphasizing the need for greater efficiency. That evening, Ima returns home to find her mother drunk again and locked out of the house after misplacing her keys. Although annoyed, Ima helps her inside. The next day at the restaurant, a wealthy man compliments Ima on the food and the ambiance. After introducing herself, she is surprised when he gives her his business card, asking her to call him to discuss something important. Meanwhile, Nonso shares with his producer the details of his breakup with his girlfriend. They decide to shoot a video where Nonso announces his plan to visit restaurants recommended by his fans to review their food. That evening, Ima finds her mother overjoyed after winning a prize of 100,000. Her mother promises that she will no longer depend on Ima for money. However, Ima, frustrated by her mother's attitude and financial irresponsibility, reminds her that she needs money to get a new place. Their argument ends with Ima storming out, declaring that her mother should learn to take care of herself. Back at the restaurant, the wealthy man meets with Ima, offering to help her expand her business. He surprises her with a marriage proposal, revealing that he is deeply attracted to her. To prove his seriousness, he leaves a 5 million check as an initial gesture. Overwhelmed and unwilling to accept his offer, Ima returns the check, though he assures her the proposal remains open if she changes her mind. Meanwhile, Nonso begins his restaurant reviews. At one location, he harshly criticizes the food in his video, ending the shoot abruptly. Ironically, his producer eats the same food to satisfy his hunger, disregarding Nonso's remarks. Nonso later vents his frustrations over his failed date, expressing annoyance at people's behavior. That same day, Ima raised her voice at her manager, frustrated that the restaurant was losing money while she desperately needed to raise $2.5 million. She demanded all financial reports immediately. Later that night, Ima pleaded with a man she owed money to, asking for more time to pay the debt. However, he refused, giving her until the end of the week to settle the Chiwatsa $2.5 million before abruptly ending the call. The next day at work, Ima scolded her staff, accusing them of frustrating her efforts, especially one employee who had ruined the generator by pouring fuel into a diesel engine. She dismissed some staff members as the expenses were becoming unbearable. This led to arguments among the remaining employees as tensions continued to rise throughout the day. A few days later, while Ima was meditating on solutions to her financial problems, her mother interrupted her, asking for money again. Overwhelmed, Ima lashed out, pouring out her frustrations. Later, she apologized for her behavior, and her mother sympathized with her struggles. That evening, Ima told her mother she planned to ask her friends for financial help, but her mother discouraged her, warning that they might embarrass her. Instead, Ima got the idea to contact some agents. After she left, her mother sneaked into her room, took some important documents, and made a few calls. When Ima returned, her plans had fallen through, and her mood worsened. However, her mother handed her some money she claimed to have borrowed from a friend, believing it would help Ima raise more funds. Ima wasn't happy about this because the lender was known to be troublesome, but she appreciated her mother's efforts before going to freshen up. Months later, Nonso and his producer continued visiting and raiding restaurants. During their travels, Nonso made it clear that any woman wanting to be with him must accept him as he is. At one restaurant, the manager was furious with her staff for damaging the microwave, which she said would affect their efficiency. She demanded they find a solution and went to inform the CEO. Meanwhile, Nonso's food order arrived late. Annoyed, he rudely criticized the attendant for the delay and the poor packaging. She explained that their microwave had broken, but Nonso continued to talk down to her efforts. Surprised by her bold response, he argued with her until the manager intervened. However, Nonso kept insulting the staff and the food, prompting the manager to throw him out of the restaurant. Unknown to Nonso, the incident was recorded on video. The following day, Ima's manager reported the incident to her. When Ima saw the video Nonso had posted online, she was livid about how it tarnished the restaurant's reputation. Her manager identified Nonso's next planned restaurant visit, and Ima decided to confront him. She found him and demanded he take down the video. After exchanging heated words, she left while Nonso contacted his lawyer. The next day at work, Ima discovered her restaurant was almost empty due to Nonso's negative review. She called a staff meeting, but a letter she received disrupted her focus. Determined, she sought out Nonso, only to be shocked when he served her a court order. Nonso was equally surprised when Ima revealed she was a barrister and would represent herself in court. After a heated argument, they parted ways. Later, Ima returned home to a devastating discovery. Her mother had used the family house, left to them by her late father, as collateral for the money she gave Ima earlier. Furious and heartbroken, Ima confronted her mother, accusing her of jeopardizing the only inheritance their father left them. Her mother apologized, but Ima lashed out, saying hurtful things and telling her mother she never wanted to see her again. The tension in the restaurant also worsened, with most staff resigning due to the dire state of the business. That night, Ima's mother tried to apologize again, but Ima angrily ordered her to leave, locking herself in her room. The next morning, Ima realized her mother was missing. She searched the house and called her mother's friend, who denied knowing her whereabouts. The friend warned Ima to resolve the situation, threatening to take over the house if her mother didn't pay the debt. At the restaurant, Nonso arrived looking for Ima, but the manager ignored him. Frustrated, Nonso threatened to call the DPO, forcing the manager to give him Ima's address. Meanwhile, Ima was at home, desperately thinking of a solution when a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Opening it, she found Nonso, who angrily berated her for missing their court hearing. As Nonso continued yelling, Ima broke down in tears, leaving him speechless. She explained everything that had been happening, her financial struggles, her mother's actions, and her failing business. Nonso, moved by her plight, decided to withdraw the case. Ima expressed her gratitude before he left, allowing her to focus on finding her mother and salvaging what remained of her life. Let's take a moment to pause as I hear from you in the comments. What are your thoughts on what you've seen so far? What do you think of Nonso and Ima's mom? If you were in Ima's shoes, how would you handle such a situation? While I look forward to your responses, let's continue and see if Nonso decides to reopen the case. Nonso returned home and informed his producer that he had withdrawn the case, much to his producer's surprise. He then moved on to other tasks, but later went back to check on Ima to see if her mother had returned. During their conversation, Nonso suggested involving the police and promised to assist her before leaving. That night, while they were on a call, Ima asked Nonso for a favor, to post a video of her mother in hopes of finding her. Nonso agreed to help. The next morning, Ima's mother came home. She explained that she had left because of Ima's harsh words, which had hurt her deeply. After sharing her feelings, she went to her room. Meanwhile, Nonso shared the good news with his producer, who asked why Nonso had suddenly become so involved in Ima's affairs. They both continued with their work. Ima told her mother about all that had happened while she was away, including her failed efforts to save the business. She concluded that the best option was to sell the restaurant to save their house. Her mother apologized, and the two reconciled. The following day, Ima informed her manager that she had to shut down the restaurant because she could no longer meet the expenses. Her manager comforted her. Later, Ima went to meet a wealthy man who had shown interest in buying the restaurant. He offered to purchase it at a low price and proposed a partnership to ease her burdens. However, Ima, being a determined woman who knew what she wanted, declined his proposal and left. That same day, Nonso visited Ima to check on her. She shared her difficulties in finding a buyer for the restaurant, blaming the negative review he had posted. Shocked by her revelation, Nonso offered to buy the restaurant himself. Ima was stunned by his decision. Nonso later discussed the purchase with his producer, who was surprised at how attached Nonso had become to Ima. When the producer asked if Nonso liked her, Nonso's reaction made it clear that the question struck a chord. The two moved on, enjoying their time together. Days later, after buying the restaurant, Ima felt a sense of relief. Being in the kitchen brought back fond memories of her late father, who used to cook noodles for her. She explained to Nonso that continuing the restaurant was her way of preserving her father's legacy. Nonso felt sorry for her as they toured the restaurant together. That night, Nonso found himself lost in thought. Could it be that Nonso was changing? It seemed unlikely he would reopen the case now. Let's see how things unfold. One day, while Nonso was waiting for his producer, a fan approached him, expressing admiration for the restaurant he now owned. She rated it a perfect 10 out of 10, took a photo with him, and promised to spread the word about it. After she left, Nonso reflected on how being a public figure often meant receiving unconditional support, regardless of right or wrong. On their way back, Nonso's producer read a tweet criticizing Nonso for ruining someone's business and taking over it. Though Nonso justified his actions, his producer advised him to be mindful of his reviews and to try to encourage rather than criticize. That same day, Ima's mother heard about the events surrounding the restaurant and apologized for not being there for Ima earlier. She acknowledged the changes in her daughter and praised her resilience. They reconciled and shared a heartfelt moment. The next day, Nonso invited Ima and her mother to a meeting where he surprised them by handing ownership of the restaurant back to Ima. He explained that it didn't sit well with him to take over her business, knowing how much it meant to her. He believed it would benefit her, as people assumed he still owned it. Ima and her mother were deeply grateful, and they all enjoyed a meal together. While Ima was checking the restaurant one day, she encountered the wealthy man again. He apologized for his earlier behavior and proposed they become friends. Although he expressed interest in her, Ima politely declined. He wasn't offended and promised to assist her if she ever needed help. From that point on, Nonso and Ima started getting along better. That night, Ima's mother had a heart-to-heart talk with her before heading to bed. The next day, while Nonso and Ima were heading home, they bumped into Nonso's ex-girlfriend. She congratulated him, assuming Ima was his girlfriend, and noting that she seemed capable of handling Nonso's lifestyle. Later, Nonso shared the encounter with Ima and asked how she would have reacted in his ex's position. Ima told him that relationships need balance and that love should be separate from career. Nonso was impressed by her perspective, and they enjoyed their evening together. This movie teaches us not to judge a book by its cover. Instead of tearing down others' efforts, why not encourage them or offer constructive advice? And if you don't have the ability to help, it's better to remain silent. The story also emphasizes the importance of forgiveness, even when it feels difficult. Forgiveness ultimately brings peace. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this amazing channel for more captivating, educative, and entertaining Nigerian movies. See you next time.